So I went to law school.
Right.
I wanted to get into media and entertainment law because I really didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in media and entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
After about 3 years of practicing media law in D.C., I went to. I decided I bet being a talent agent would be more fun than this.
Right.
And luckily, I didn't know how hard it would be. And I applied to. I did some research, and this is a little before there was a vigorous internet, and in the middle to late 90s, and I found this William Morris, what was then the William Morris Agency, and they had this 100-year-old talent agent training program, and I applied. And to this day, it was the most difficult job. The process of getting the job was more difficult than any I've ever gone through. It was
worse than Teach for America.
I don't know the specifics of that, but I put it up against Teach of America.
Okay.
There was 8 or so interviews. It started with even like a typing test, and then you at the end it culminated once a month, one day a month. They would bring all the finalists in, and you would go into sort of a star chamber. Boardroom in New York, in their New York offices, or that's where I was doing it, and they would have the board of talent agent trainee admissions, if you will, and they were all these extremely powerful agents, and you had to interview with a dozen of them at once.
Right.
And I don't remember what happened, but I did make them laugh, and I did get in. So I quit my law job for the pleasure of starting in the mailroom for about 30 cents a day. And you literally started in the mailroom. But that was the prestige thing to do. If you started as an assistant, you weren't in the program, you were in the brotherhood. It was much better to be abused, apparently, by starting in the mailroom and working your way up to assistant and this and that and the other thing. And I got a job back in D.C. where I had been previous, and at a place called Washington Speakers Bureau to be an agent. And they did mostly corporate, and they did speakers and sports figures and lots of media folks like Tim Russer and all, every political figures, presidents or former presidents, senators, business, famous business people, motivational people you've never heard of, but like of the Tony Robbins ilk, and he's like at the pinnacle, and then it goes down from there. Yeah. And I enjoyed it, but I was also really stupid in some ways, but I had been loving comedy, and I started improv when I was a lawyer with Comedy Sports in Washington D.C. So I didn't ever do any comedy myself until I was 26, something like that.
So you were working law, and then you would take the night classes. You take the
night classes, and Comedy Sports is very much like Whose Line Is It Anyway games versus like I didn't know anything about like Heralds and all that stuff at that point.
What they have out in Raleigh is sort of a similar ilk. Like they just started pushing long form over there. They have like their one night a week for
and so that was the thing. It was very successful, and we got paid. We would make like $15 for doing a show. It was very exciting. Right. And so when I got into being an agent, though, there seems to be a pattern. When I got into being an agent, I thought that it wasn't really appropriate to also be a performer, and I was never really going to be a performer anyway. I mean, let's face it. And so I would just do the agenting thing.
Right.
And so I was at Washington.
I think you're gonna let the dog out because.
Woo woo woo.
Yeah, Pepper at least can go out. Come on, Pepper.
Joey Bag of Donuts. Joey Bag of Donuts.
Hey, Joe Bags, get the hell out of here.
No.
Joey was there too, but he probably won't come back.
Come here, Joey. Right. Joey can go out once.
Did you see Pepper tackle Joe Bags? That was hilarious.
But
it was
really
it was a cute tackle.
Yeah. Joey and Banky,
they peacefully coexist.
No, they don't. Not at all.
Okay, never mind.
what is he actually
Sneak
named
attacks.
after that bit?
Yeah, the bit Mike Birbiglia bit.
Yeah.
So is that and that's how you met Rory, right? Was doing the Comedy Sports?
No, Rory I met when I came back to DC when I was at part of the time I was at Washington Speakers Bureau as an agent, and then I had my own thing. It was actually probably right after I left there, and I then moved on to Washington Improv Theater,
Okay.
which was much more long form, and I was lucky to get in any of their troupes, and we were in not what was considered the best improv troupe amongst the Washington Improv Theater troupes by any stretch,
Right.
and it was called Improv Nation.
Right. What's the improv hierarchy in Washington improv scene?
You know,
do people look down on short form? They look down on long form.
It's much more. The cool kids do some version of long form. But comedy sports has gotten really, it's still going. And a different owner bought it 10 or 12 years ago, but. It has a permanent place. It makes money. It does really well. It gets packed house.
Is there some
do both. We did both in Improv Nation.
Right.
It was.
Do you think is there
both and none somehow?
Is there some reason why short form appeals, or is just more of a money maker than long form? What do you think?
Short form, just in general, you mean?
Yeah, in general.
This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Short form is, I had never done improv before, but I could instantly get what short form was. You weren't relying on, it sort of have, with the games and everything, there's sort of built-in shtick that you can learn to make funny even if you're not your most creative self that night. You need to be more technically good at some things. It's almost more science a little bit than art, than the long form. And, and long form can get really esoteric and weird, and you can go for 10 or 15 minutes and it's a really good and interesting scene, but it's not laughing. Right. And the audience, if they're not really clued into what it's supposed to, the experience is, they're like, I came here to laugh. Like, it's more like stand-up. Right. It's a little bit maybe more like stand-up.
The audience has to kind of be prepped for what they're going to see.
Yeah, and
they have to have some exposure
even in short form, we have the whole, I was ref for a while, and, you have a whole spiel at the beginning about what's going to happen. It's all made up. It's not, that's why we get suggestions, da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's also nice because you can do a couple things at the beginning that are very warm-up, more of a warm-up, and then you can do games that involve longer scenes and less shtick as you go on, because you kind of trained the audience in the first quarter or so of the short form show. If something's not working, well, just wait 5 minutes. We're going to do something else.
Right. And did you have improv troops come to your festival?
Oh yeah, it started
improv, sketch, and stand-up.
It started. It started improv, sketch, and stand-up, but I would say there was more improv and sketch at the beginning, because that was really more my personal, network of people that I knew, but we had stand up from the beginning also, and then it grew. We had Baby Wants Candy from Chicago. We had Meat from New York, the all-girl group. They were fantastic. We had, I literally can't. We would have 50, 60, 70 acts. Right. In every genre. We added film in the second year, and then we even broke that down a little bit. And, we had a lot of industry content and stuff. And it was, I think it started with a little bit more of the sketch improv people, though, just because that's where my network originally was a little stronger.
Is that what you gravitated towards when you got an interest in comedy? Was it always just improv?
No, this is what, it's funny.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning.
For real,
okay.
25 minutes ago, we're sitting in this kitchen before camera guys who can't see came in, and Anthony was sitting there, and he's like, well, what first got you interested in comedy? And I was thinking about this as I was driving over, and what is the one of two actual records that was there? But this is George Carlin's Class Clown. So I grew up in northeastern New Jersey, just outside New York City.
Yeah, we went to northeastern New Jersey, and we actually picked that.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, okay.
That would be insane.
This is right. Well, that's what it looked like. They could have gotten it from my childhood bedroom. And I started listening. I started listening to George Carlin, Steve Martin, Robin Williams when I was about 8 or 9, I would say. A lot. I found out that the parents of other children did not appreciate
Carlin?
these did not
Or
want
all-
me playing these records for their. I don't know if my parents never listened to the records.
Listening to Carlin, listening to this
over
record,
and over again, like people would listen to
Okay.
Sean Cassidy, like listening to this over. Am I dating myself? Listening to this album over. I could probably still do it. Heaven, Hell, Purgatory, and Limbo. I know things about like Muhammad Ali and the Vietnam War because their bits are in here,
Right.
and then I would like look him up and read books about him and stuff. I wasn't a bad kid, like at
No,
all.
there's
but
nothing bad about that. It's
No,
very-
in fact, so
Right.
then fast forward. I was raised Catholic when I was Italian Catholic. in New
Yeah.
Jersey.
No, there's just a lot of guilt associated.
No, but wait, there's a point. So it's CCD, right? Which
Yeah.
is Catholic Sunday school.
Yeah.
Basically,
We don't
but
know
it's
what
not
the
on
other C
Sunday,
stands
it's
for.
during the week, I don't know. But and you don't like read the Bible, they give you like Reader's Digest excerpts. They don't want you
Right.
poking around too much. And we were learning, I was like 10 or 11, and I'm like a good girl, right? And I'm wearing a back brace, and teachers do not find me threatening. So they probably gave me a little more leeway. And I said, oh, I have this really great thing about heaven, hell, purgatory, and limbo. And all I'm thinking is like, there is no swearing in that bit.
Yeah.
There's none. And so I taped it, like played this on the record player and then had the big thing and taped
Yeah.
it, like recorded on like a cassette tape, and then went and played it in the front of the room at the next CCD, which she let me do because I was such a good kid.
Mhm.
And teacher was Mrs. Flannery, and I finished, and she said, I went to school with George Carlin, and he was a very bad boy. So, but I didn't seem to get really in a whole lot of trouble. This Wow Reality, what a
Who
concept.
got you into Carlin?
I don't know.
You
No,
don't-
I was thinking about that. Now my brother had the Wow Reality, What a Concept, that Robin Williams album.
Okay.
And then we shared and got the Steve Martin,
You would take
Todd-
turns listening to it.
Well, I really took him on afterwards, but he was 3 years older than me, so he got the Robin Williams album. The rest kind of came from there. But
Okay.
I don't think my father had it. I couldn't tell you, but it was mine.
Was your
Mine
family?
afterwards.
Was your family very? I'm guessing they had good senses of humor, but they were very funny people.
They're very. My father is very quick.
Okay. Clever.
Clever.
Okay.
Very, very smart, and he was very quick. And he liked it when I was he was a bit of a smarty pants, and I would get sort of like pats on the back if I was a smarty pants in a way that amused him.
Okay.
So but it's not like they bought me this album. I
Well,
don't
yeah,
know.
you're quick in improv too. I noticed, like when you're in a scene or whatever, you there's an idea that pops in and you just take it and run with it, and then.
No matter how it destroys what everybody else is doing.
No, yes. This seems perfect right
Regardless
now.
of who else
And you're just
makes
hammering
it.
it in. Yes.
That's
No.
the point of improv, isn't it? It's really to make what you want happen.
Sure.
No.
Well, exactly.
No, that's why I stand up in some ways better. But so it was really the class clown, and then in the part of the world where we both grew up in, generally, we got cable and HBO and all that long before it was in the rest of the country. And so I had HBO 78, 79, 80 when they started doing all their great comedy specials, and the Richard Pryor Live on the Sunset Strip, and then in the early 80s, Eddie Murphy. And I used to call, I am not somebody, that,
Who was the one you first saw live?
I think it must have been pretty late in my life because I
Yeah.
went to college and law school in a very small
I
town
would have
in
thought you would have seen
Virginia.
Richard Pryor when you were 8 or something.
No,
You were
I saw and for some reason my parents, like I was watching Saturday Night Live when I was 6 and 7 years old, like the original cast. So they just apparently didn't monitor my media intake in
Okay.
any way. I'm sure if I grew up in this age, I would be like already
You'd be-
kidnapped or something
yes.
because of
You-
misuse of the internet.
You would have gone down the loop.
a bad path.
Yeah.
But so I guess the first thing was Saturday Night Live that I really remember, and then the albums came from that. Steve
Mhm.
Martin was on there, so maybe that was it. But and I remembered, some people have a photographic memory and they remember everything they read. I'm not exactly like that, but I have a little bit a little bit of I call it an audiographic memory. I remember things that I hear. I have a good pitch and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so I could, the next day at school, I would like repeat, long parts of, Eddie Murphy's Raw or whatever to my friends. Which is one way to learn timing and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there weren't a lot of 9-year-old girls in
9-year-old white girls
in like
in the
suburban,
fitness,
small town, upper middle class New Jersey who were quoting back the Eddie Murphy Raw, or the Richard Pryor to their friends. So I wasn't that popular. No, I was all right. Weird. Whatever, yada yada yada. Law school, talent agent. Festival, bankruptcy, and here I am.
Wow, you just breezed over like 30 years.
I know,
right.
we don't have enough time. But
okay,
yeah,
cool.
I was seriously into comedy at 7, 8, Saturday Night Live and original cast and through, and I couldn't tell you exactly why, but I didn't see live comedy that I can remember until my early 20s.
You said you said before because your dad seemed to appreciate that little smart-assy kind of, and so was that a way just to kind of get that?
Well,
I don't know,
maybe in sort of 8, 9, 10.
Yeah,
I was just quick. I was quick, and I had a decent vocabulary, and so the little snarkiness probably sounded a little more grown up, so that probably amused him more or something.
Right. I think
go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I think that's what I picked up from like my interest in comedy. It became from this feeling of I'm an adult because I understand these jokes about the clitoris.
Well,
that's
yes,
hilarious. That's
Yes, Mrs. Jones, it's hilarious.
Yeah. And so
And but I had never done any acting or anything before I did improv, so I have anything about where to stand on stage and that stuff. That all came from improv. I was also, some of the improvisers I did things with also had a sketch group called Pretentious Actors Collective, so that sort of coincided with all that for like a year and a half. And for somebody who was an agent and stuff, I was kind of naive about how things work and what you had to do to get noticed and stuff. It's kind of adorable now.
When did you start doing stand-up? Because you didn't start here, you started...
I did about 6 months of... I'm going to say 6 months. Somebody could archive, check this, and maybe it was 10 months. But I think I did about 6 months in the year 2001.
Okay.
And I was dating someone who's a good friend. Like, he came to our wedding, and I'm going to his wedding, and whatever. It was after my first marriage. I was dating this guy I did improv with and stand-up with. And I feel like that he and the other people there was only one room out in Vienna, Virginia, was nothing downtown. I mean, the DC scene was non-existent in 2001, 2002, except for the DC Improv, which really didn't help local people that much. Although John Mulaney started there when he was at Georgetown University. Dave Chappelle started opening there a million years ago. So, but it wasn't like there wasn't a whole scene.
Right.
And so the open mic was like Tuesdays or Wednesdays in Northern Virginia suburbs, and and it was very shticky, and I was encouraged to be shticky, and I'm like, this is not what I like to do. I'm just going to do improv and sketch. So I did it for about 6 months, and about 12 or 13 years ago, for about 6 months.
All right. What now? Since you started doing stand-up again, what kind of stand-up? Well, what do you gravitate towards? What seems to inspire you, or just you like to write?
What I do is not necessarily the same thing I enjoy watching other people do.
Okay.
I think that it is dangerous. Now I'm going to put this as I'm kind of like, I told you this once. Really, I'm like the person who owns the comic book store.
Right.
Like, I can't draw, but I know everything about comic books. Okay, so I'm taking that from this perspective, not from, I'm a super great comedian, and so this is more like I own the comic book store. I've read every comic book. Right. I know their whole background about their lives, so this is my perspective from that way. or even from like an agent or a booker.
Well, don't you think that's how most comics start out? Is sort of the comic book store owner just going, oh yeah.
I don't know. I've met a lot of guys who that's not the case. Some of them like, oh, I love Bill Hicks, and but a lot of it is not. Like my personal favorites, like of the moment, like I still love David Cross. I still love Chris Rock when he was doing his. I was comedy manager in New York when he was kind of sharpening his set for what was the last one? Was the last one Bigger and Blacker? I can't remember. For his last taping, so I saw him. Sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose, at different clubs, working on his set for that. I mean, I still think he's great. I love Patton Oswalt, like, love him. Like, I just want to ride around the back of his car. I love him. And there's so many, you can't even, the people who are now starting to make it.
So then how would you describe your comedy?
I think that a person is, to be the best comic they can be, has to be as close to their truth and persona in a way that works on stage as possible. And so in some ways, I don't think if you want to be really good, I don't know if you get to choose what kind of comic you want to be. I think you have to grow into the thing that, if you're a comic, somebody's told you you're funny.
Right.
Somebody, maybe lots of people. And there's some inherent truth when you're sitting around like the cafeteria table or the conference room table at work. There's something inherently truth in those moments that are unplanned that make you funny, that you then have to extrapolate into an onstage persona without losing the truth that it started with. Right. So my comedy, I'm not sure what my stand-up comedy is yet, but I think it has to be as close. I tend to, I'm really chatty. I tend to talk fast sometimes, not because I'm nervous, because I can, I guess. I don't know. Right. But I tend to talk really fast, and Do
you see yourself more as a comic or an improviser or a producer for shows? I mean, where
I don't
do you
produce anything really.
Well, you produce the Sweet
Oh
and
God,
Sour.
that's just so I could get some more stage time.
Right, but but a lot of us do that.
Yeah.
But the way that you've done it too, though, you've made it into a viable and a relatively successful room compared to a lot of the other rooms that have they've gone up and then they get like one or two good shows and they just kind of fall flat. So I mean, you've definitely shown that you can produce some things. I mean,
I come from a long line of pushy and manipulative people, so I think that helps. Course, if you're going to be a producer, that's really helpful.
Right.
And I enjoy it. I'm a fan, so I'm the host. I'm never the star of that show.
Yeah.
And so it's for me to get a little stage time at the beginning, like 8 or 10 minutes or whatever, and then I have people who are just funny. So and I get to enjoy that, and I laugh. And on a Monday, that's great. I wouldn't consider myself a producer right now. I've alluded to it, but basically with the last festival, I had put so much money into it, and frankly, my husband, who his mother had passed. I mean, I've learned a lot. It's all good, but it literally bankrupted me for decisions I made and. And let me tell you, it was awesome. Like, I had a shuttle van for all the performers to take me from venue to venue. Yeah, it was like, you would have loved to go down with this ship. I mean, it was like going down with the Titanic. If you're going to die in a boat, like a big, like, ocean liner accident, be on the Titanic when you do it.
The hosts are all playing violin.
Right, exactly. It's classic. No, it was awesome. And, you got young comics who, hey, I put you in like, the Helix Hotel in D.C., which is like a W hotel, because I've gotten like some trade for them. I like awesome downtown. I can't afford to stay there now. Oh, I just threw up and wet all over the bed. Oh, I guess I'm paying $300 for a mattress. Okay, so things like that happen.
So it seems like stuff.
You learn.
Right.
But I had great people like T.J. Miller. People like I can't even. The people who were my clients, and Sean Patton and all those people. Those were the young guys though.
Were there any guys that you saw?
JB Smoove.
Right. Were there any guys that you saw, too, that you were like, oh, wow, this guy's going to be something, and then it didn't pan out? Or, like, guys that you were like, well, what?
Let me tell you, when I really started to decide I was going to get into managing, is I was producing the festival, even though I was living in Chicago, and I went to see some open mics at a place called, like, went to the Lincoln Lodge a lot, and there's some other people. The folks who were there were T.J. Miller, Kamal Nanjiani, Mike Bridenstine, Kyle Kinane. Is it Becky Donahue? And then, there's another girl from Chicago. I'm gonna kill. Whoever you are, I can see your face in front of me. It's that I'm old. You're awesome, and I can't. You used to go out with Mike Bridenstine. What the heck is your name? And Jared Logan and
What's the thing that separated those guys from like guys that just
Novak.
Yeah.
They had a really good milieu, and I think, my opinion, when stand-up started getting good in DC was when the people who did improv and sketch, mostly improv, started using those skills to do stand-up. And Rory Scovel was one of those people. And lots of more and around that same time I started the festival, a little before that encouraged some open mics, and now there's a plethora of open mics. There's a huge explosion of improv groups in DC in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
So you're saying that a comic's ability to just acquire a wide variety of skills made them stronger than...
When I said that you kind of don't choose maybe the persona that most rings true for you on stage, however, I do believe that the improvisation skills are invaluable, and this is the difference though. I don't mean getting up on stage, so this is the producer agent mouthy part.
Right.
I don't mean getting up on a show that people have paid for when you're not especially, you've been doing it for a year, you're not especially skilled in trying to riff a 20-minute feature set. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're developing, you're doing your open mics or your little shows, and being able to find those moments where you're like, I just thought of this, it would actually make this joke funny. I'm confident enough to say it. I'm not improvising in a real show, an entire set. You might try an open mic. Some people can do it, some people can't. I'm not saying eternally making a set out of crowd work. Comedians sometimes get so enamored with their crowd work, and you know what, that's kind of boring for the audience if you do more than a couple of few minutes. Some people want to make a 20-minute crowd work, and there's always somebody who can do it fantastically. Right. There is always that guy, but you just assume it's kind of like he's just not that into you. You're the rule, you're not the exception. Just assume you're the rule, not the exception. So but I think the skills, taking improv classes, because of how it can help you build material and think and riff with yourself, even when you don't have like writing partners or a group, or kind of letting things kind of spin out in your head without like judging it too much. Sounds
a lot like the point, I was talking with Eric Schaus about this. Have you seen him perform?
Just at the open mic a few times.
Okay. He described when he was working on jokes and when you try to work them out in front of an audience, he's like, your setup and your punchline. So that in that space in between, allow yourself the opportunity to riff, to try to build, because you know what the punchline is of that joke. You know how you
can bring it back.
You can always bring it back, but give yourself that space, that freedom to create, because you'll find something like 9 or 10 times. You'll build something that and that's how you structure your bit, and in that moment, in that looseness, in that allowing yourself to improvise, you'll gain something that's it sounds in the moment, it sounds real, and it connects really quick.
Because sometimes it takes you being in that millisecond to you have your bit, and I think this is what Eric's saying is. You just realize that the tone of voice you're using, the vibe in the room, the energy, suddenly it's just incredibly clear that I should say this.
Right.
Like it was just a conversation. But it also helps you sometimes write that stuff in advance, or it just gives you the confidence to seize that moment and have a better feel for when it is appropriate to seize that moment. Sometimes it is very appropriate to riff, especially when it's not, if you've been doing it for more than 4 months like me, or if you have the confidence to try it, there's an excellent chance it's going to work out at least okay. Right. And it might, and I think you should really be doing that in your open mics and those kinds of shows.
Right.
So I encourage every stand-up to take a couple of improv classes at least, because they learn skills about writing and going beyond the first obvious punchline and tapping into a feeling or a truth that's beyond the surface.
When you write your bits now, and do you leave that opportunity for yourself to improvise, or?
More now than I did 3 months ago.
Okay, yeah.
I think I think so. I think I'm getting better at it, because first you got to get used to like talking out loud in front of people with nobody else on stage.
But you've got this wealth of improv experience too,
Yeah.
which I would have thought too that would make it easier for you to transfer over into doing more crowd work or to doing more loosely structured bits where you have a general idea where you're going, but you're gonna.
Work last open mic.
Oh, I'm sorry?
You did some good crowd work last open mic.
Yeah, there's nobody. There's nobody.
The heckler.
For me, how can I put this? Because of I was not the world's best improviser. I was very funny at times, and other times I was not very good at the yes and I feel like I've grown. But I know I know I can go up on stage and be sassy and talk to people and make them laugh, because especially in like comedy sports as a ref, that was your whole job, was warming up a crowd without a little bit of a script, but not much of one. So when I have when I have 12 to 15 minutes a week on stage, I personally, for me, am more worried about seeing if I can have written jokes at work.
Okay.
Because I know I can fuck around with the crowd a little bit and it'll be fine.
So you've already got this tool in your belt there, and you're like, all right, well, if I can do it, I will. If I need to, but I'm not going to, because right now my
I'd like to
biggest
have
concern
15
is
to
just,
20 minutes
Right.
of solid material,
Okay.
and then if I'm ever asked to actually, do anything.
How many times do you got to do a bit before you're like, all right, this is solid material, or does it ever?
I think that
become-
after 3 or 4 times, I know if it's worth doing anymore.
Okay.
But then I've got, my stupid cats. I mean, this is gonna be like my tagline. I'm gonna have like the cartoon me, like Kathy, and like, hey, what about cats? But I had a version of that the first night I ever went on that you like dared me almost. And I'd been talking about doing it and I hadn't, and it was like the first slot was open, I had no material. So I went up and said something cats, and it was kind of funny. And so that evolves, but I knew the first or second time I did it that there was, it was worth, and I still changed stuff and had, there's a wealth of cat material available to me, so I still add to it. But, then there's other stuff that I do, and I'll do it 2 or 3 times. I'm like, that's more smarty pants than it is funny. It's not working. So that doesn't mean it's solid after 3 or 4 times. That just means it's worth.
You have an idea of what your vibe is, or what your voice is, and is there a way that you would be able to describe it, like when you go up on? I mean, you're pretty new into getting it.
I still feel I'm new. I find it's a weird mix of being sort of. This is not the perfect word, but it leaps to mind, so I'll use it. Sort of almost a little authoritarian, but usually directing those weapons of mass destructions on myself. So so it's sort of like I'm not one of the types of comics, and you might see this more in a female comic that has like a shy voice and that kind of thing.
Right.
That's not. I know. In 4 months, that's not my thing. And when I was practicing, I started this earlier, but practicing slowing down my set because I talk so fast. And my husband actually said, "You're talking so slowly now that it doesn't sound like you."
We didn't even talk about gender or anything, or the role that plays.
Yeah, chicks are solid.
Well, but
Can I tell you my whole lesbian female comic experience growing up?
All right, can I ask the question first?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so maybe it's because I agree with you that you have that again authoritarian that presence. Do you think that your gender then plays a role or a more I don't know how to say it now, but Well, I'll just ask it then, just a general base question. Then, how do you think you being a woman plays a role in your comedy? Because your presence is more authoritative. Like you command the stage when you're up there. Yeah, I don't think anyone is going, well, I could say shit to her and she's gonna break. I don't think anyone thinks that when you go up on stage. I think you've got a very.
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna cry. Afterwards, sure, but not on stage.
Yeah.
Because I'm a professional.
So does it play a role, or?
I grew up very naively thinking that girls could do anything that they wanted to, and that I was plenty smart enough and whatever, and I worked hard enough and this and that if I was good, I would just be good, and and if I wasn't good, then I wouldn't be good, and that, to the point where I honestly mean that word naively, because as I went through life, I'm like, oh, that's because I'm a chick. You're not letting me do that. Oh, I didn't even occur to me. Like,
right.
But I think it was beneficial in a way because I didn't have a lot of hang-ups about it. My father expected me to get good grades, and my mother, and I wasn't raised. My mother to this day, you don't know how to cook or do laundry. It's like, well, nobody taught me. It didn't seem to be a priority, so I don't. So, but I think that naivete was maybe useful in a way. But
I think you need that when you're first,
Yeah.
You need things are going great.
This is fantastic. I am good.
Yes,
I'm
nobody
extremely good.
told me that I sucked.
Right.
This is I'm going to come back next week.
Right. This is good. This is a good choice. I'm making good choices.
Right.
But there's
always that fear.
Right.
But
But then
you put it away.
It has to be superseded by the unmitigated positivity. But
God,
I would say.
Do you remember? Oh, all right. Sorry.
What?
Do you remember like the first time you got a laugh doing stand up? Do you remember like first time?
I think when I did
that moment when that
yeah, well, I think it was like they said something about the cats can't handle guns, and
right.
and that was like, because it wasn't just that they weren't. And that's that improv thing. It's taking it further, like. The cats aren't gonna, get into trouble, and it's then you go. That's where the improv comes in. It's like, well, what would get a kid into trouble? Knocking over a liquor store and a cat. Well, then what would they would? Well, they would have a gun. Well, cats can't hold a gun. It's kind of applying reason to an irrational situation.
Right.
That's like improv.
Oh wow, that sounds very scientific of you. The way you were
I did in law school and. But with the female,
I remember that too because you talked about the opposable thumbs. They don't have opposable thumbs.
They don't have. They would be adorable if they had them. They would be adorable.
They would.
But the female thing, when I was growing up, I didn't used to think there were many funny female comedians. I'm talking 1980, 82. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, but that Ellen DeGeneres is pretty funny, and that I'm essentially
Margaret Cho.
Every comedian female that I wound up thinking is that I'm like, oh well, there's an exception to the rule. Now this is in the 80s.
Paula Poundstone.
Paula Postman. Hey, she's pretty funny. Turns out, you find out later, they were in the 80s. They were all lesbians. Why is that? I thought about this at length, and now I will tell you.
Okay.
The reason is that back in the 70s and 80s, with the social mores being what they were, women were essentially taught that if they were funny, and this is why I quit comedy this first time, because this is what people were telling me to do, and I didn't like it. They had to make fun of their boobs. They had to call their boyfriends, or they suck, and they forgot my flowers. And PMS, that stinks, right, everybody? Like, these were your topic. Oh, I'm so fat. Oh, I'm too skinny. I have no boobs. That was like it. Yeah. Now, my theory is that lesbian comedians who are coming up closeted, at least, to the, greater audience at large, in the 70s and 80s, didn't want to talk about anything having to do with folks they were dating or that sort of stuff. I think they steered away from that material because unconsciously they didn't want to accidentally out themselves. Right. Because back then there was still, they would lose jobs. They wouldn't get jobs. Ellen DeGeneres wouldn't have gotten on that weird Fox real estate show as a receptionist if she was out back then. And so because they were steering away from PMS, doesn't my boyfriend or husband stink? Boy, how about these kids? They're a handful. Mm-hmm. Because they were steering away from that, they got the liberty to talk about all the other things you can talk about. And from that is where you then get your Tina Feys and your Kristen Wiggs and everybody else who yeah, sure. I talk about my husband sometimes, and this, but it's not like 95%. And so I think that it's kind of actually those lesbian stand-up comedians paved the way for the lesbian or not lesbian, whatever in between, like Tina Fey's, Amy Poehler's, and so forth, to do everything that they do beyond the stand-up. And
any major life lessons to take away from? I mean, just your years doing the festival, or over at Second City, or anything like that. You could share. Okay. There's a couple of things that I learned even more as a producer, agent than performing, which is good because I did that a lot longer. There's a few things that are really important. You have to hold in your head at the same time great hubris and great humility. So you have to have the feeling that you can do great things and yet accept every opportunity that is given to you, the smallest hosting job, the smallest open mic that you didn't put together, that somebody else is taking their time to do, the 3 minutes or 4 minutes you get. You have to accept those at great humility as if they're precious and treat them as precious. And yet you have to have this hubris to keep you going, that I know eventually I can do great things, and yet right now I need to be humble. You know, notes, that sort of thing, that's a good thing sometimes, and sometimes it's not. And a lot of people in the universe, whether it's comedy or anything else you want to do, because of their own stuff, are going to tell you it's not going to work out for you. If it's what you want to do, do it. If somebody gives you a note and it rings true to you, then think about it. But if you think they're full of shit, just don't get in a fight. Just ignore them and move on. Because a lot of people are going to be telling you things to bring you down, and they're not even consciously knowing they're trying to bring you down, but they are. Right. So develop a compass so that you know whose taste to trust on some of these things. And sometimes the best comedian is not the best person for you to be getting a note from. And then the last thing I would say is that persistence trumps talent. Over the long game. Steve Martin had a quote in his book that was...
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Well, it was Born Standing Up.
He's smart. The persistence wins. Let's say you're in the top 1% of funny people in America. Well, that means there's 3 million. All right? So you're one of 3 million. So if you want to be one of the top 300 comics in America, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of keeping focused, and a lot of persistence when you don't feel like it. It's like working out. Yeah. And it's I've seen a lot of funny people who either didn't work or were self-destructive, who are never going to, I don't mean make it be Seinfeld, but I mean like have a paying job in comedy, like corporate, or I'm a writer or whatever.
But they could if they just had that persistence.
If they were persistent and they didn't feel so entitled. And there's one last thing, and this is for real, and I'm a little biased, but don't get in the habit of drinking before you go on stage. I've known comedians. One guy from Chicago died. Comics and rock stars are in milieus. They perform in places where everybody else is out. There's drugs or drinking. And I don't care about drinking. And this is not a personal thing. This is not like I think it's immoral. And I've done it every way you can do it. I'm old. But you for yourself, you have to become comfortable with yourself and the stage and everything that might go wrong. And if you are, I'm not talking about a beer, but if you're drinking every time, first of all, you're not going to be your true self up there. Right. Or the version of it. You're not going to have real control. You're not going to have the perception to understand when a riff is a good one that you should keep for an act or not. You're not going to sense the vibe of the audience in the right way. And frankly, a lot of times you're going to blow a lot of stage time just fucking around. So just my personal thing, be careful. If you are drinking and getting high every time before you go up, you might want to think about that. You might want to try some open mic some night when you don't. Right. And see how it goes. Yeah. Because I've seen it lead to a lot of, not everybody, but enough of a minority that something to think about.
Right. Yeah, it's a big part of the.
I mean, that's why it's always
Atmosphere
rock
of
stars
living.
in comics who die. I mean,
Right.
most of the time, and it's understandable. I mean,
There's some saying too about comics picturing themselves as rock stars in their own light, but without actually
and like the
having.
nerdiest rock stars.
Yeah, yeah.
But so I mean, that's like, I know I sound like a mom when I say that, but it comes from some.
No, I didn't come across that like a mom at all.
No,
but,
it comes from. I don't give. I don't. Let me put it a different way. You want to get fucked up after your set? It's probably not a problem. But if you're getting fucked up before your sets, that's a huge problem, and it's not professional.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you see it happen with the open micers. They come in, and guys, it's the first time, so he has like a few drinks, and he has a few more, and he has a few more, and
Right.
he's like the 25th comic to go on. and
Right,
it's,
exactly.
Like
now you've
30.
been drinking for 4 hours. Exactly.
Right, yeah, and he goes up and he makes a complete ass out of himself, and you never see that person again. Like, they disappear off the face of the earth. You
Yeah.
never.
This is adorable, by the way.
Right, yeah. Oh, I had a choice. I kind of yes-anded. I was
You're
like,
right,
"Alright, I'm gonna take
exactly.
'em." But yeah, alright, I think
Oh,
that's.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
think, yeah. That's,
I'm
that's
sorry,
all.
I talked really a lot.
I think that was the point, yeah. But no, I appreciate it. No.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Good for you for having that album. Thank you very much. Alright? Is that good?
Thank you.
Alright,
Yeah,
let's do some
cool.
drinking, am I right?
Yeah.